Ladies and gentlemen, the far left has done it again. Really, they just can't help themselves. Their radical rhetoric has just directly caused yet another domestic terror attack, and right this very moment, everyone's eyes are locked on to none other than California Governor Gavin Newsom. Now, as you might have heard, just hours ago, a far-left radical opened fire on a federal ICE facility in Dallas, Texas. Take a look at this.
What can you tell us about this incident in Dallas?
Yeah, literally, as I was coming here, we were notified that there were shots fired at our Dallas field office. Right now, preliminary information is a possible sniper. We have 3 individuals that are down at this time. We're not sure on their condition. They've been taken to the hospital. We're hearing some reports that the shooter may be down from the Texas Department of Public Safety. The scene's secure. You know, obviously right now, my hearts and prayers are going out to my officers and agents. That's my biggest concern. And as well as everyone in that area. But this just shows the violence that's being increased against ICE officers and agents. This is the second time now we've had a shooting at one of our facilities in the Dallas area. And really, it's just a sad time that we have to worry about violence against law enforcement.
And so, folks, like I said, very clearly, this is just yet another example of politically motivated violence coming from the far left. But you know what? If you don't believe me, take a look at this.
What I can also share with you is that early evidence that we've seen from rounds that were found near the suspected shooter contain messages that are anti-ICE in nature. Again, this is just the most recent example of this type of attack.
Imagine that. So this guy that just shot up the Dallas ICE facility also engraved anti-ICE messages into his bullet casings. Sound a little bit familiar? And as we now know, this ICE facility shooter was also a self-avowed communist and a literal member of Antifa. So when I use the phrase domestic terrorist here, that's quite literally what he is. Folks, let the record show here that the left has just undeniably and inarguably become the party of domestic terrorism and political violence. At this point, we have been given example after bloody example of their proclivity for violence, and every single time, not only do they refuse to disavow and condemn the violence, but they actually end up justifying and celebrating it. And then, of course, we even have senior-ranking Democrats like California Governor Gavin Newsom just openly and directly instigating further attacks just like this. In fact, take a listen to what Gavin Newsom had to say about this entire dynamic literally just last night.
This guy is flooding the zone. He's dominating the narratives. Facts don't seem to matter. And Democrats, frankly, have had a difficult time pushing back. And Democrats feel that, times there's sort of this weakness that dominates our brand and our party. And I think what people appreciate is that we're willing to fight, and not only fight symbolically by having a little bit fun, but fight substantively. We have 41 lawsuits against this son of a bitch.
You hear that? We need to fight substantively. And of course, like he said, they have been effectively engaging in lawfare for years now, but now they're just openly embracing political violence as well. Folks, in just the last 18 months alone, far-left domestic terrorists have tried to assassinate the president on at least 2 occasions. They just assassinated the nation's top right-wing commentator, Charlie Kirk, bless his soul and rest in peace. Violent assaults against ICE officers are up by over 1,000%, and now they're just opening fire on federal ICE facilities. And the reason why all of this has been happening is because of this type of rhetoric. Take a look.
I fear that we will not have an election in 2028. I really mean that in the core of my soul, unless we wake up to the code red, what's happening in this country, and we wake up soberly to how serious this moment is.
Folks, let's just go ahead and set the record straight real quick. When senior-ranking Democrats like Gavin Newsom say things like this, Trump is a fascist, our republic is at risk, we might never have another election again, the implication here is that the evil fascist Donald Trump must be stopped by whatever means necessary. And as we've seen time and time again, all it takes is one mentally deranged far-left radical to hear what Gavin Newsom is saying, then they pick up a gun and start pulling the trigger. Now, luckily, the Trump administration is just starting to finally take all of this far-left violence seriously, and I've got a clip I want to play for you guys, but first, I do want to say real quick that if you folks enjoy the daily news updates, please consider subscribing to the channel because it really does help a ton. But okay, check this one out.
This country is dealing with a rising threat of radical left-wing terrorism. There were two very nearly successful attempts on President Trump's life. A bullet hit President Trump in the head. It was only centimeters away from taking his life. This second attack that we're talking about today, the president was moments away from walking directly into that line of fire. Of course, the healthcare CEO was brutally gunned down by another self-described so-called anti-fascist that was then celebrated by other self-described anti-fascists, who of course are really communist revolutionaries. And the heartbreaking assassination of our dear friend Charlie Kirk while speaking at a college campus, billions of dollars in property damage by Antifa and other far-left rioters, organized criminal campaigns of doxing and violent intimidation, 1,000% increase in violent attacks on law enforcement. These are not isolated incidents, Will. It is part of an organized campaign of domestic terrorism. It's sophisticated, it is well funded, it is carefully orchestrated, and it is designed to prevent the lawful democratic process from occurring in this country through violent political means. And so President Trump took decisive action yesterday by formally declaring Antifa to be a domestic terror organization. And then as we speak, under President Trump's leadership and direction, we are working on a broader counterterrorism strategy to fight domestic terror in this country, to uproot, dismantle, defund, and destroy these terrorist networks inside the United States.
And so, folks, like I said, so far the Trump administration has finally taken the first couple steps needed to really start combating all of these radical far-left terrorists. That being said, however, I do feel the need to be brutally honest with all of you for a moment. This wave of far-left violence is not a problem that's going to go away on its own. If left ignored or if combated with half measures, it will only increase in volume as it has been, and the nation will slowly devolve into a violent anarcho hellhole. So, as far as I'm concerned, right now, fate is currently knocking on President Trump's front door. He and he alone has the opportunity and the power to end this violence once and for all and really to save the nation. That said, if he refuses and if he allows this far-left violence to continue, the extent to which Trump will be remembered by the history books is the extent to which future generations will say, Trump? Isn't he the guy that stood idly by as the nation descended into chaos and violence? And so this is why I'd like to go on the public record here and say, President Trump, we all gave you an overwhelming mandate to save this country, and things have recently become clearer than ever. This country does, in fact, need saving. So my message to President Trump is this: crack down on all of this radical far-left violence, put an end to it permanently, save the country, but perhaps most importantly, put America first.